Hi listeners, Jason here. We are excited to finally announce registrations for the biggest psych health and safety community event ever. The inaugural The Psych Health and Safety Conference will be held at the Sofitel Wentworth, Sydney, June 19 to 20, 2024 and offer concurrent virtual attendance. It'll feature live podcast recordings with OG researchers including Christina Maslach and Michael Leiter of Burnout fame, Psych Health and Safety USA podcast host I. David Daniels, Australian super experts including the likes of David Burrows, a special 10-year anniversary integrated approaches to workplace mental health panel with authors Tony LaMontagne, Angela Martin and Kat Page, hand-picked case studies from organisations doing it well, and a very special interview with plaintiff Zaggy Kozarov by Catherine Dunlop on that High Court case which we previously covered on the podcast. This event will sell out. Get in quick to secure tickets at early bird prices for the 2-day conference, pre-conference masterclasses, and the VIP dinner. The first 200 in-person registrations also get a copy of her latest book, The Burnout Challenge, signed by Christina Maslach herself. Find out more and register at www.psychhealthandsafetyconference.com. Now, on to this episode.
From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. With workplace mental health becoming a safety prerogative, this is the source of information on psychological injury prevention and health promotion.
Hi, and welcome to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. My name is Jason Banshee, and I'm one of the hosts of the show. The aim of the podcast is to rapidly increase the knowledge and application of psychological health and safety in workplaces worldwide. To help with this, we have regular guests from around the world who are leading the way in this important area. But before I introduce our guests and topic for today, allow me to introduce my co-host, Joelle Mitchell. How today, Joelle?
It's November, Jason.
Yeah, we had Melbourne Cup Day yesterday.
Yeah, not that we
didn't
paid any attention to it at all.
It didn't want to stop the nation, but didn't stop Flourish
us.
DX.
No, nothing can stop us. Yeah, it's just barreled along.
Yeah, it's generally about this time though that everything starts to wind up for the year, and then you start having all the Christmas functions and
speak for yourself. My workload look ahead does not wind up until about the 20th of December.
Yeah. Well, a large part of my role is business development, right? And the only thing people want to do at this time of year is go out for a cheeky beer at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah,
knock off for the day. Yeah,
whereas the people that me and the psych team deal with are like, oh no, we need to get this done before Christmas.
Yeah,
squeeze it in there.
But you must be looking forward to having the team over in December.
Yes, that will be good. Good to see them all in person. I think I haven't actually met Heather in person.
Yeah,
before.
Neither have I. I feel like Heather and I are long-time friends, but and she obviously works with us, but never met her in person. Crazy world we live in these days.
It is, but good that we've got technology that allows us to do that.
Yeah, because
it means that we can hire the best people into our team.
That's right. Yeah, they don't have to be Perth-based, which is great because Perth's pretty small.
It is. Not that there aren't good practitioners.
Oh, there's some great practitioners in Perth. We definitely punch above our weight. So, Well, look, we got a couple of interesting guests on today to talk about something very big that's coming up in Australia very shortly.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so we should probably introduce them in.
Probably.
Okay. So Andrew Gavrielatos is the Congress President and Executive Director at SafeWork New South Wales. Joelle, thanks for not telling me to work out how to pronounce Andrew's name beforehand. Hopefully I haven't butchered it like I normally do.
Yeah, you did sort of go to the effort of learning how to pronounce people's names the last recording that we did, so I foolishly assumed that you would have learned your lesson and done the same methodology again this time.
Andrew can confirm whether that was close enough, is good enough.
Yep.
And then Skye Buatava is the Congress Director.
You're doing an excellent job.
And Director at SafeWork New South Wales.
Do you want to just give the full name of the Congress as well?
Oh, yeah. They're joining us to represent the 23rd World Congress on Health and Safety at Work.
You did a really good job of that.
This is why they wanted to be on the podcast, because we're just so darn professional.
We're very smooth. We're a very professional outfit.
Yeah.
Are we going to keep that, or do you want to try it again?
No, I think
keep it.
We keep it.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
A warty podcast.
That's the only way.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Welcome, guys.
Thank you. It was a beautiful introduction. You nearly got it right, but that's okay. We're happy to be here.
And thank you from me as well. We'll run lessons on pronunciation of names at the end of the podcast. Thank you.
That would be great. Look, I have butchered probably worse. You can probably tell I was a bit rushed before the podcast today and didn't read the agenda beforehand. So, but welcome to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. That's the way we roll.
That is the way we roll. Glad to have you here.
Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure. So to get us started, a couple of softball questions, and the first one is, what podcast do you like to listen to? So Skye, I might ask you first.
Yeah, sure. I must admit, I'm not a huge podcast listener. I read a lot. I focus a lot in my day-to-day job. So when I have downtime, it's typically music that I move along and train with. I don't like things that engage me too much outside of that. But look, I will call out the Women in Safety podcast. I think that's just a really clever podcast that is going around right now, and it's featuring some wonderful women, and it's enabling us to support each other in different ways. Learning from each other, lifting each other up, being able to relate to the stories of other women in safety. So, their stories, their insights, their connection. So that's probably my favourite one going around at the moment. Alana Ball does a great job there, and it's lovely to see such a network locally.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you been on that podcast yet, Joelle?
No.
Why not?
I don't know.
You're a woman in safety.
Yeah.
If you're coming to the World Congress, Joelle, you need to come and check it out, because they're having their Women in Safety Awards evening essentially on the first night as a side event to the World Congress. But definitely should come along and meet some of the wonderful women in our environment.
Yeah, Jason's going, but I'm...
Yeah, our PD budget extended to two of us, and that's Andrew, who's based in Sydney, and myself. So next time, Joelle, next World Congress in Sydney, you can
sure.
Come on.
But maybe we can arrange an introduction, Joelle.
I am actually connected with Alana, so yeah.
Fantastic.
We've had plenty of conversations, just not on her podcast.
Yeah. Well, Alana, get your act together, get Joelle on.
Let's not call out people. Andrew, what podcast do you like to listen to?
So interestingly, Jason, when I heard your voice, you actually reminded me of a podcast that I listened to a fair bit, more so in the past than nowadays, but Freakonomics. It's been a real favourite of mine, and part of the reason for it being a favourite is because they try and understand why people act the way they do, obviously from an economist's perspective, but it was, particularly in its early days, it was using data to try and understand that. So for me, it kind of introduced that idea of what's the data around why people do things. And sometimes they're pretty quirky things as to, where is it safest to sit on a plane if it crashes, for example. But if I can, and I think I should, I think I must give our own New South Wales Safe Work Safety Casts a plug. So if anyone is wanting to listen to a good safety podcast, get on the New South Wales Safe Work website and listen to our safety casts.
Good plug. And Andrew, can you tell us, please, what is your role in the Congress this year?
So I am the president of the World Congress, so my role will be to officiate. I have to admit all the hard work's been done by Skye and her team, so I congratulate them on that work. But at the same time, it's been about trying to provide some guidance as to how we might approach it, what the thinking should be. And really, I think what we do have is an amazing Congress, which has already drawn a few thousand people to participate. At this stage, I think we have just over 127 countries represented, 240 speakers from around the world. And we're really excited that it will take place in Australia for the first time since the conference ever started, or the Congress started, and it started in 1955. And it's coming to Australia this year. We're really proud, and we're really looking forward to showcase not only the talent that we have in terms of the safety professionals in Australia, the regulators in Australia, even business and industry and how it manages safety, but also showcasing our fantastic city.
Yeah, wonderful. That's a lot of countries attending, or representatives from a lot of countries attending.
Certainly is.
Yeah. Skye, can you tell us then about the excellent work that you and the team have been doing, and what's your role in the Congress?
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, I set up and run what's called the Centre for Work Health and Safety. So that was an initiative of SafeWorks back in 2017. So that's really focused in on, using and looking for evidence and intelligence that will enable us to create products that will help in the prevention of harm or in better regulation. So from an origin story perspective, and I'm happy to talk a little bit more about the centre because the stuff that we do there is pretty awesome and progressive. And so certainly helping us move along. So I think traditionally the World Congress has been an academic conference, which is probably how it kind of aligned with my role probably about 3 or 4 years ago now. So I did kind of put my hand up and say, sure, of course I can do this, which has been such a joy. But I'm the director of the World Congress is the short answer to your question. But being able to think about putting on an event in Australia with a totally different take on it, has really been what I've been doing for the last couple of years.
So I guess you're probably then well placed, Skye, to tell us a bit about the Congress and what people can expect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's 4 days with a bonus day is the way that we describe it. So we were really cognizant in planning this event to make sure that it wasn't just an academic conference. It wasn't people standing up in front of a PowerPoint behind a podium. We've all been to those. Sure, you get some great information, maybe some things that are insightful, but you walk away, nothing really translates into practice when you're back in the workplace. So we're really conscious with regards to the way in which we established this event. To make sure that it was worthy of the title of a World Congress, not just another work health and safety conference. And there's a few things that we did. So we made sure that when we designed the program, we had a significant portion of or significant diversity of perspective. So we have 26 symposia and 6 technical sessions, whereby you will hear from people from all around our work health and safety community, but also right across the world, talking about single topics. And what I mean by that in practice is, let's just say that the topic was construction, working in construction, high-risk construction. Then within a panel, within a symposium, a 90-minute segment, you would have people from academia sitting opposite somebody from, a policy or regulatory perspective who are also sitting there alongside a frontline worker and a supervisor. And then, on top of that, you think about that perspective, but internationally. So a developing nation as well as developed nations. And it creates this really eclectic mix of stories within that single topic. On top of that, we're using storytelling to be able to describe what's actually happening so that you can translate, understand, but also translate that into practice. And a real focus on so what, essentially. So tell us the stories, share with you the perspectives, but how does that translate practically to the audience again, which is developing nations right through to developed nations, workers, our researcher colleagues, other experts in field, C-suite decision makers, and so on and so forth. So it's not just a conference, I think is what I'm trying to describe here. We've got 4 days of significant content like that, particularly Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, where you've got the symposium and the technical sessions. On the Monday, we've got workshops all day. So we really wanted to provide, and we heard from our colleagues that they want to be able to learn things in detail. They wanted to receive CPD points. So we've got 26 workshops on the Monday, and that's where you can learn everything from, due diligence around the boardroom through to how to manage psychosocial risk in the workplace. It's that real practical, tangible workshop style training. And then there's a bunch of social events and other things as well that I'm sure we'll get to talk about.
Yeah, terrific. It's interesting, like you say, with the symposia, like having to putting so many people side by side. Because I did have a look at that. I was like, how's that supposed to work? You've got like 6 or 7 people. Is it a panel? And then but like you say, there's all these different views on one topic, which actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and look, it's been really, really exciting in planning it. And we've had such beautiful feedback from the 240 speakers that Andrew referred to earlier, because we haven't just gone, cool, let's chunk these people together and see how they go on the day. we've actually taken a real effort to have a number of meetings with the collective speakers and work through how each session is going to occur, and where each person will bring in their areas of expertise, their stories, their tangible practical outputs. And it's done a couple of things, and very much on brand with the World Congress. One, it's created these beautiful networks and connections, these international connections of people who are going to go on stage as a team, not just a group of people that have met just as they walk on stage, which often happens in panels if we're realistic. But two, it's also enabled these sessions to be crafted based on the power of the collective. So this collection of people have worked together on how to best craft each of the symposium, which has just been astounding. So it'll be really professional, it'll be really sound, but it's also going to be entertaining and engaging.
And I hear for those who weren't lucky enough to get a spot at speaking, like myself and Joelle, there will be a poster sessions as well, or posters available.
Yeah, look, it was so competitive. We had 1,130 abstracts submitted to speak at this event. So it was so competitive.
So we just missed out is what I'm hearing, Joelle.
I've got to say it was such a fair process. They all went through a double blind review. So the people that reviewed it, reviewed each abstract, did not know what they were reviewing, whose abstract they were reviewing. And so it means that people were picked on merit. One of the interesting things we did during the abstract was make sure that we put an emphasis on what we're calling the takeaway. So that's the practical things that people can take away and utilize for free in their workplace. And we'll talk a little bit about how we're going to pay it forward post the World Congress as well. So look, it's been really interesting. There is absolutely poster presentation. So we saw how many people wanted to speak and how many opportunities were available, and really maximise that. I mean, 240 speakers, you don't typically get such broad content. But the digital poster terminals is twofold. So we've got 30 poster terminals in the exhibition hall, being a little bit green with that digital terminal setup, but also enabling us to be able to showcase all of those posters, because there's 500 odd posters that people have submitted to be able to talk with your colleagues, network, or browse in your own right. We're also uploading all of those posters onto the app, onto the terminal, so that people can have a look at that there as well. There's such rich content in there. I'd like to think of them as not just your typical poster presentations, because you've got to remember this content for the event has not just come from our researchers, it's come from our work health and safety community.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andrew, I guess Skye's given us a bit of the what and the how, but I guess what are you trying to achieve? What's the why behind the Congress?
Well, if I can go to the actual theme of the Congress, which is shaping change, what we're hoping to do, obviously, is bring together, these, few thousand people who will be attending the Congress to talk to each other. So the presentations are one part of it, certainly. The panels or symposia are another part of it. And as you mentioned, we'll be running almost 4 symposia at any given time concurrently. So people will be able to pick what they have a particular interest in and to be able to hopefully take away that information and try and apply it in their own setting, in their own country. I think the other thing that's really important for me is to provide a venue that not only people are able to attend the symposia and the technical sessions, but a venue that allows people to talk to each other. Everyone that has ever attended a conference or congress, the one thing that they all talk about is having the time to be able to have conversations with people of like mind, or even people who you can have a conversation or a debate about issues. So I'm really keen to actually see those, few thousand delegates that we will have there having those conversations outside of the symposia forum, having them when they're in the lunch area even. I think that's really important to be able to sort of, whilst you're having something to munch on, to have a conversation, or whilst you're having a coffee in the main foyers of the ICC, to have those opportunities to really, I suppose, help stretch your own thinking about the various safety topics that will be covered. And really the other thing in terms of the modern safety landscape that I have been seeing is that it's no longer about a single discipline. It's about a number of disciplines and how they come together to search for safety outcomes. And I think that the Congress provides that opportunity to have those sorts of discussions. And certainly if we're suppose, given a good nudge by our speakers, given a good nudge by those symposium, the panel members who are presenting, to then sort of create that curiosity, create that conversation, and ultimately, I suppose, create those collegiate opportunities where it doesn't end when the Congress ends, but you've met somebody, you have a contact for somebody, and that contact can be anywhere in the world where you can test your ideas with like-minded people. So that's kind of, I think, one of the really important aspects of the Congress, not just the formal bit, but the informal.
Yeah, and that's definitely what I'm most looking forward to out of the Congress. Yeah, there's going to be some great content. I've circled a couple of sessions that I definitely want to get along to. But it's, like you say, it's people from all over the world. Pretty much, everyone in my network, or like a large proportion of people in my network, again, go to the conference, and there's all these nice little social things that are starting to get up. There's some WhatsApp groups. I know if, people want to reach out to Andrew Barrett and people like that, they're setting up some WhatsApp groups for connections during the week. So it's going to be a great opportunity to catch up with a lot of people that you don't get to see in one place all too often at all.
And also meet new people who you've never thought about meeting with as well. So it's actually the new, not just the people that you've heard of.
I'm sure I won't be a snob, and I will reach out to some people. But there's, 130 countries, right? I haven't been to 130 countries. I don't think I've been to 10 countries. So
I have.
Well done you.
And they've got, these people, if there's anything I've learned in the last 12 months, particularly in speaking with all of these people and crafting the sessions, it's that they have so much rich content, things that I have never thought about. And I've been playing in the work health and safety space for 15 years. And I'm just astounded with these new insights and new things that I've learned about from around the world. And it can be everything from, Norway's, system to have an occupational physician design work health and safety, proactive work health and safety plans for every business, customized and continuously reviewed, right through to the way that Papua New Guinea are looking at mining and the mining sector, and in the absence of not just work health and safety law, and don't get me wrong, they have work health and safety law, but it's not as progressive as ours. But even in the ESG space, they just do it anyway because they consider themselves a global business. We're getting such rich content from so many people, and it's not just the developing nations that have their finger on the pulse here, and that's been the real surprise, but the opportunity when we've got them all here with us in November.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are you most excited about, Skye? Which sessions are you most keen to check out?
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple. There's probably the session on people, profit, planet, and I know I'm preaching to the choir with you two, but we hear so much around, where does safety play in this people, planet, profit environment, in this ESG conversation, and having that conversation on an international level, I think is going to be a really exciting symposium. So that's on the Thursday morning, people, profit, planet. I'm really looking forward to the CEO roundtable and the regulator roundtable, again, learning from, our executives, and board members about what makes them tick as it relates to safety and how do we get their attention if we don't have it. Despite best efforts as a work health and safety professional, unless you can translate that through to, get the attention of the board or for them to understand the benefit, the strategic benefit, the benefit to the bottom line, et cetera, then you're probably not going to achieve a great deal. So understanding from those people firsthand how to shift the dial there. We've got a regulator roundtable, and maybe this is a bit nerdy of me being the regulator, but having the regulators here from all over the world, and again, an eclectic mix of people with such beautiful perspectives, all having really frank and progressive discussions. They're probably a couple of the highlights from me. But then there's, our keynotes and guest speakers. If I think about, Adam Goods talking about his experiences, particularly in this day and age right now, about the racism he experienced in his workplace, being AFL, we know Australian of the Year, former Australian of the Year. How insightful to be able to hear firsthand about something a little bit different, but that we know is still in our workplaces every day. There is so much content. I could probably sit here and tell you about my favourite bits all day, but Andrew, you've probably got some favourites too.
I do, and I do want to sort of call out our keynote speakers. You've called out Adam Good as somebody who's going to tell us quite a powerful story about his workplace and how he suffered in that space. But there's also Candice Carnahan from Canada, who is a woman who's had a significant accident and has lost a leg. So she'll be talking to us from that lived experience. So I think that's going to be a really powerful conversation. We're also, as Skye said, we're trying to make sure that each of our panels provides a very diverse perspective. So we do have industry involved. We do have unions or workers involved, and in some people with lived experience as well. So hearing the different stories from that different perspective is something that I'm really looking forward to. We've also obviously got other keynote speakers as well. We have Zippo from which African nation is Zippo from, Skye?
Yeah, Zippo Sikakana. Yeah, she's actually worked in a significant number of countries, which is one of the attractions of her. She's talking on our leadership stream, but she has such rich stories of working in that leadership space right across a ridiculous number of nations during her career. So some really interesting stuff there as well.
And she's really promoting that idea of the importance of safety culture and how that is really important to leading any organisation. And I think that's the one thing that we need to always remember, that importance of leadership and leading safety from the top. Obviously, everyone has a significant role to play, but hopefully Zippo will be able to present her perspective from, as Skye said, having worked in a number of nations and worked with many CEOs as well. So there's some of the things that I'm kind of looking forward to.
Yeah, it sounds like there's no shortage of sessions for attendees to come along to, and hopefully really expand their thinking about all different areas of safety.
I think, as we said, with 240 odd speakers and 500 posters to view, the content is just so rich, so broad, so engaging. And I think that having others around us as we're listening or looking or watching something, then I think it's a great thing. Should also mention I should mention our partners, of course, the International Labour Organisation, the ILO, and the ISA, the International Social Security Association, who we're partnering with for this Congress. They too will have their presentation, but the ISA has the global, the Global Media Festival for essentially short films, ads, etc., anything in moving picture format. On safety, so that that'll be screened throughout the Congress, and there'll also be an awards night for the most would you call it the Academy Awards of safety film. So stay tuned for that one.
So
apparently there'll be beanbags and popcorn in the room. So as you're watching it, and I think I'm serious in saying that, just nod, Skye. That's fact.
You are. They've actually got a room that's put aside so you can go in and watch these all week, separate to the award ceremony. And we said to them, well, why don't you set it up like a cinema, right? Let's darken the room. Let's whack some beanbags on the floor. They have thought I'm a little bit mad, for the record, which I've recommended things throughout the way. And I said, let's get a popcorn machine in the back. So that's what it'll be. I said, when I go to the cinema, I want to smell popcorn, a couple of meters before I get to the door. I said, we've got a popcorn machine, guys.
And you want some choc tops and some overpriced Maltesers. Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can arrange that. But look, we've had such beautiful support from the international work health and safety community, and I do want to call that out. Everybody from Lorraine Martin from the National Safety Council in the United States, they're sending a contingent. We'll hear from her as the CEO and president of the NSC, right through to EU OSHA and IOSH, and look, so many, too many to name. But I've got to say, the international work health and safety community has really gotten behind this format, and we'll all be here on our doorstep, which doesn't typically happen.
Yeah, and I guess that's a hard feat, particularly because the NSC, they just had their big conference over in the US just very recently, and you've got the hygienist national conference like the following week, isn't it, in Melbourne?
Yeah, you
There's a bit of
do. So
competition.
we've got, well, there is a bit of competition, and it's funny. There's also Thanksgiving. So some of the things we
Oh
didn't
yeah.
think about initially, and,
Mm.
to be honest, the date was set when I kind of came into play, but
Mm.
Thanksgiving occurs and then the event's on a couple of days later. So for our United States colleagues, they kind of have to, drop everything as soon as Thanksgiving's kind of done. The plates are in the sink still, and jump on a plane. But look, it's been really nice to have that support. The other thing that we're doing, and I just want to go back to Andrew's point on the content and the volume of speakers we've got here. I mean, we really had one shot at this. This event will not be here again in Australia, certainly in my lifetime. They don't typically repeat nations, but also 1955, right? It's the first time it's been to Australia. I don't think we're next on the list anytime soon. But we really had one shot at it, and we wanted to take advantage of doing it differently, of making sure it was really diverse in those perspectives, as we've spoken about, as making sure those takeaways, those real life assets were available for all of our delegates to take away. And in line with that, we've been able to have the app, the event app. So, when you're walking around the event, you've got your phone, you're looking at what have you favorite, put on your favorites, what are you going to go and see? We've got a web-based version of that as well. But we've been able to keep that app open for 3 months after the event. So what that means you can do is you can go away and not only look at the assets that all of our speakers have uploaded, the checklists, all of the evidence-based things they're going to speak to, but you can also go back and watch the concurrent sessions that you've missed. And we think that is just so important for our delegates, not just here, but also overseas, so that we are maximising not just the content we're putting on, but the ability to go and consume that content and do something with it, when they get back into the office. Similarly, downloading those assets when they're back in the office. If you lose the app, and you often do lose an event app within a week or so of the conference concluding, we think this is Australia's opportunity to truly affect the global prevention of harm en masse with the way in which we've designed the program, the app, and everything afterwards.
Yeah, it's such a good way to harness technology, right? And something we considered ourselves for our conference that we're running in June next year. Like, just because people are there, doesn't mean that they don't want to necessarily rewatch certain content, or like you say, because you've got concurrent sessions to be able to, rather than being forced to choose, you can actually still see both. So kudos to you guys for leveraging that. So one of the things, obviously, that we did as soon as we saw the agenda come out for the conference was to look at what is the content relating to psych health and safety. And we're actually quite blown away by how many sessions there were. So we're interested to know, is this a record? Is this the most content that has been at a World Congress on psych health and safety?
So I think it is. In 2021, the World Congress was held in Canada, and it only had 2 sessions on psychosocial issues. So we've really amplified our commitment to these topics. We have 6 workshops on day 1 and 2 dedicated symposia on mental health and psychosocial issues. Look, I think that it would have been really poor on our part if we didn't amplify it. We've understood it. We are starting to understand it better. It is, I think, still an issue that people are more comfortable in raising, particularly the mental health side of things. So therefore, for once we're hearing that people have the courage to talk about it, we need to be thinking about how do we respond to it in our workplaces. So I think it's really important that, one, we have certainly amplified it. I think it is a record. But I think it's the right thing to do in response to what's happening in our world, particularly post-COVID. I mean, we've seen so many people talking about the impact on their mental health in recent years. So, yeah, that's certainly an issue that I think people are far more focused on, far more aware of, and are starting to become far more responsive to. I don't think we're doing it absolutely well, no, far from it, but we're all learning and trying to do it a hell of a lot better, and hopefully the Congress adds to that body of thinking.
Yeah, and we've seen that ourselves, right? Even the most progressive organisations that we work with, still they seem to be just scratching the surface and what does this all mean and how do we practically apply this well, particularly when you're looking at large and complex organisations and how they do that well. It's learning by talking and sharing experiences, right? Which the World Congress is obviously a great stage for.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's really important. We, Jason, my colleague and I we're overseas promoting the World Congress in May actually, and It's interesting because on an international scale, and we're in Europe particularly, they're looking to Australia, I think, because we were a little bit more progressive with regards to that code of practice. People are thinking that Australia knows exactly what's going on and we've got it down, which is really fascinating, right? Because we all know that that's not the case. And as Andrew said, we're trying, we're all trying, and there's ways in which to go about that. But just to take a step back and why we have so much, to tell you why we have so much psychosocial health content or mental health content, because it's, psychological safety, psychosocial risk factors, and all of the bits in between, diversity, inclusion, and otherwise. What we did after the Canada World Congress, which was in 2021, because remember they had to defer their event for 12 months because of COVID, and unfortunately for them, it ended up online. I think I can empathise with that now, having gone through the organisation that we have in the last few years, and my heart breaks for them looking back. But what we did immediately...
Can I just jump in and, sorry, Skye, to interrupt, and so you can continue. I just want to jump in and say a big thank you to our colleagues in Canada who were very, very helpful in giving us all of their learnings after their very difficult but quite fantastic conference, which they ran in a totally online fashion. But yeah, thank you. Sorry, Skye, go ahead. I just thought we should remember to thank Canada. They were fantastic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But look, after that event, what we did is we went in and did an international survey to understand what people wanted to see. So right from word go, when we started planning our content, we thought, let's ask the international community first. And again, representative of that entire work health and safety community, but on a global scale. And we essentially did a survey that had 16,000 respondents, which is just massive. And they told us they wanted to see three things. They wanted to see mental health, which was absolutely the standout number one thing they wanted to see. They wanted to see technology and digital and how that's affecting work health and safety. And then they said they wanted to see, things around design and work design. So that was the initial building blocks, shall we say, with regards to the way the World Congress was created. We've also, and as I said, when we were in Europe in May, they're all looking to us and going, let's go to Australia, they'll all learn. I think just to reflect more recently, the Centre for Work Health and Safety launched about 7 or 8 months ago now a product called the WHS Radar, and that's a conglomerate of information that really gives us the latest in work health and safety trends to inform all of us across that work health and safety community, us as regulators, but also business workers and everyone in that space. Now, what the radar has told us recently, and it pulls information from your typical academic literature, from data, from grey literature, but then it also looks at, things like social media. What are the trends on social media? What's happening, in the economy? And it goes really, really broad and then zooms in and correlates and produces this report that repeats every 6 months. In addition, it also asks the work health and safety community. So we do a survey across the work health and safety community in Australia. What are you seeing on the ground? What are the barriers to work health and safety in your workplace? What are the enablers? We talk to the inspectors again across the country. What are you seeing on the ground? We've got 1,000 inspectors, more than 1,000 inspectors across Australia hitting the beat. And then we also ask the Australian Institute of Health and Safety College of Fellows. Now, that's a group of people that are very qualified and have, at least 5 years in work health and safety senior leadership roles within the country. And this collection of information we're finding is really, really insightful to let us know what's coming now, or what's going on now, but also what's about to happen. And looking at that, most recently, what it told us from a psychosocial workplace perspective is that despite confusion that remains in industry, psychosocial risk is being managed better now than it was 6 months ago. So we're starting to see some shift there, which is really good. But I think back to your point, Jason, it's an ongoing point. We need to continue to have these conversations. We need to explore it together. There is still significant confusion around what is psychosocial safety versus what is a psychological risk. All of these things are still merging. Is engagement and well-being part of this conglomerate, which we hear from business that they still think that if they've got high engagement and some good well-being opportunities or offers, that they've got it down as well. So it's very intentionally designed within our World Congress program because people want to hear about it. There is still significant confusion. We know that it is a massive problem, and we're really proud to have such rich content.
And that latest report will drop fairly soon, so keep a look out on our website so you can get all the latest in terms of what's happening around the nation. It's not obviously just a New South Wales Safe Work One. This radar survey is truly a 360-degree radar which tries to pick up all of the information from around the country.
Hi listeners, Jason here. We hope you're enjoying this latest podcast episode. Now, if you're like Joelle, Alicia and myself and enjoy learning from the best, then the Flourish DX Academy is for you. The Academy includes free e-learning courses on the ISO 45003 standard for psychological health and safety at work, and associated topics such as how to conduct a psychosocial risk assessment and how to create the business case for psych health and safety. All courses feature high-quality videos, downloadable resources, multi-choice questions, and a downloadable training certificate on completion. Take your learning to the next level with all Flourish DX Academy courses included within the Flourish DX mobile app. Select podcast episodes from the Psych Health and Safety podcast and sister podcasts from Canada and the USA are also included. Get started with Flourish DX for free at www.flourishdx.com/get-started. That's www.flourishdx.com/get-started. Now back to this episode.
Yeah, that's a really interesting, I don't know if tool is the right word, but thing. It's an interesting thing.
And hopefully we haven't kind of like thrown that out with all the social media posts that we do on the psychosocial health and safety. Might have skewed the data a little bit.
We've just been flooding the socials.
It's all important. Social media, the people, the workplaces, the diversity of workplaces, diversity of geographical locations that people work in as well. So it all helps paint the picture.
And is that report something that anybody can access, or is it sort of limited to different entities?
No, everything that the Centre for Work Health and Safety does, we put out for free. That's in fact why we exist. So if you just Google Centre for WHS, you'll get access to everything, including the radar. And this is something that we see is really us giving back to the work health and safety community. Don't get me wrong, as a regulator, we will absolutely benefit from it as well, to understand not just what's the prevalence of injury, because if you the origins and the conception of this sort of a product came from, right, what do we do? What do we need to tackle? Where do we need to focus as a regulator to make sure we're getting really good traction? And if you ask me that and I look back at the last decade, I can tell you the top 6 industries of major harm and cost have not changed. The top 4 mechanisms of injury have not changed. Our emerging things in the changing world of work, they have not changed. So we needed more. So don't just tell me prevalence. I want to know, what do I do to shift? What are the barriers? What are the enablers? What are the things that people are not willing to tell us? What are different sections of our work health and safety community know and are willing to share that we might not hear from other sections of the work health and safety community? And that's really what spurred this on. But we hope that what this radar does is that it doesn't only inform the regulator, it doesn't only inform the Centre for Work Health and Safety in our next line of research, but anyone within our profession can pick it up and go, great, that spurs an idea, or I'm going to try and tackle things this way, and that's why we also want to repeat it every 6 months. So we see a trend, we see some changes, but it's definitely I'm happy with thing for the record, Joelle. It is nothing like anything you've seen before. It's been, conceptualized as a result of this weird place that we play in, which is, we are the regulator. I've got a bunch of beautiful and eclectic, scientists from right across an array of disciplines, a bunch of PhDs that work within the centre. We've got data science. It's this really eclectic mix of people and thoughts, which is what creates something different.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And if I can just plug the Centre for Work Health and Safety that Skye does lead, it has a variety of research projects which are published, but also tools that are developed to assist particularly smaller business who might not always have access to some tools to ensure safety in their workplaces. So if I can encourage people to go onto the Centre for Work Health and Safety website, it's an incredible resource. It's a wealth of information on many, many topics, from psychosocial issues to welding fumes. So the breadth is just quite amazing.
You could probably say it's a bit representative of our roles in this work health and safety space, right? We need those soft skills so clearly. But our technical skill is so stretched. as Andrew was kind of get at. But I mean, what's your perspective on that, Jason, Joelle? Because that's a really tough place to be. It's expanding the technical capability, but the soft skills are certainly elevating. What are your thoughts on that? I'd love to hear.
It's so funny because someone jumped on one of my posts recently regarding psychosocial risk management and the role of the health and safety professional in this space, and saying, no, this is an IR thing, like health and safety shouldn't be playing in this area. And I'm like, asbestos wasn't a health and safety issue until probably the 40s, and like fatigue risk, that wasn't really something until the last few decades as well. And we've just had to expand the health and safety profession, right, to encompass more things. Because if we look at the role of health and safety as like helping people get home in a healthy manner, the same way that they arrived, if not better, noting the positive impacts of work on health, then really it should encompass everything, right? And looking at the Safe Work Australia statistics, looking at workers' compensation stats that came out recently, yes, mental health conditions only account for just under 10% of all workers' compensation claims, but they account for close to 40% of all the compensated time lost due to illness and injury. So if the whole goal of the health and safety profession is to keep people healthy and at work, and we're losing 40% of time due to mental health conditions, I think it's a real opportunity for health and safety to lend their expertise to, rather than going, no, that's not what we do. We just need to continue to broaden it. But like you say, it's stretched then, isn't it, Skye? Because you can't be an expert in everything. And we do need people who bring expertise in different disciplines. So
I think that's kind of where we probably need to do better at distinguishing between specialist and generalist roles. And maybe upskilling generalists to understand when they need to seek the specialist support, where they can go to access that, and especially for small business as well. How can you need to be the ultimate generalist in a small business, and maybe you're actually the business owner and you're also the safety person and you're also HR and you're also IR and legal and all of that. So having those resources to say, here's where you can go for assistance with this, it is really important also. And I think that there's also an aspect of, the duty is for the PCBU, not for the safety function in the organisation. And so there's an aspect of thinking about how we organise the work of safety as well, because, training and competence is absolutely a safety issue, but that tends to fall under the people and culture remit, through recruitment, through training, through monitoring of, ticket expiry dates and all of those sorts of things. So, that's a very simple example, but we can certainly see how responsibilities for different aspects of work that contribute to safety can be distributed through an organisation. And if we look at something like the engineering function, they have a hugely important role to play in safety outcomes. And, you would never ask a safety generalist to go and sort out that cracked bridge foundation. That goes to your engineering function immediately. So again, it's, sort of distinguishing between what is actually the role of the safety function in the organisation versus those other specialist roles that all sort of collaborates and contributes to that outcome of safe work.
And I think, Joel, the reality is that people do know when they need an engineer and call the engineer in. We need to get people's capability or knowledge up to a particular point where they recognise that they can do part of it. But when they need that specialist psychosocial intervention, that they know who to call, they know who to bring in.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really fascinating, that intersection, though, between our safety space and the HR or IR space as well. So I've been talking to a lot of people, even within Australia in the last year. I even went along to a couple of HR conferences to promote the World Congress, because, traditionally in medium and larger business, as we all know, the safety person would often sit somewhere in the corner of the PNC team. And it was really fascinating speaking to leaders in people and culture across the country. And I think they're in two buckets. One, they're continuing to think that one group are continuing to think that work health and safety is still just a subset of their team that just kind of sits over there and does their thing. The other see it as an opportunity. that work health and safety and the things we're speaking about, whether you're talking about, psychosocial risk, and they're all very, very alert and awake to that scenario. But they're seeing the opportunities, whether you're talking about your diversity and inclusion policies and practices and the way that functions within a business and how that links through to psychosocial risk or psychological safety, as an example, as well as all of these other things that you've mentioned, whether you're talking about the safety culture, your learning and development, and otherwise, that other group of our HR professionals out there are now going, you know what, this is part of our remit, as opposed to work health and safety is not ours. Going, it's an opportunity for it to be ours and for us to work more closely and to link these two together for the benefit of everybody, for our workforce.
Yeah, so sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so maybe some future listeners for Florix DX, right? Let's bring in the HR community into the circle.
Yeah, and we're definitely trying to do that with our conference, right? So we know that there's a good intersection when we're talking about psychosocial risk management with the amendments to the Sexual Discrimination Act here in Australia, which have the positive duty for sexual harassment prevention, which have basically just lifted the risk management component from the model regs. So deliberate, I guess, copywriting, plagiarism, fair enough. And then, even things like diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, that as well. So, and then the whole sustainability agenda too, like you were mentioning earlier, Skye. So there's a lot of intersection, and we need it's really a transdisciplinary approach that's required. Yeah.
So to go back to a couple of comments that you've made, Skye, around psychological safety and psychosocial risk management, we do talk about this fairly regularly on our podcast, so regular listeners will be familiar with this particular beef that we have.
Bane of our existence.
Yeah, so there's so much concept confusion between those two terms, and I think that so many people use them interchangeably when we know that they're really very separate constructs and concepts. So interested to hear, I guess, from your perspective, what is the difference between the two?
Yeah,
and why is it important for health and safety practitioners to understand the difference as well?
Oh, look, it's important because they're two totally different things. They intersect, but you need to tackle both, I think is really at a high level why it's so important. But if I talk about psychosocial risk, I'm talking about those workplace tangibles. So, your role clarity, your autonomy in your workplace, the reward, good relationships, your reward imbalances, those things that affect your work or your work environment, and they are the risks that we see and that are called out in our code of practice, those actual risks. When I talk about psychological safety, to me that is having that trust, having that ability, the diversity and inclusion, the ability to bring your whole self to the workplace and feel that you can raise issues of work health and safety concern, of personal concern or otherwise, without fear of judgment and repercussion. Now, if you don't have a psychologically safe work environment, how are you ever going to have the right conversations around psychosocial risk to have affirmative action that helps prevent those? So that's the way I see them. That might be a really simplified view. Again, not a psychologist, just to be really clear, but really plainly, that's the way that I look at the two. That psychological safety is so important. The care, the empathy, the relationship, being able to bring your whole self to the workplace, and having that no fear of repercussion if I raise something to do with work health and safety or personally or otherwise.
Yeah, great.
What do you think from that perspective, Joelle? Tell me, professional opinion. If this is a regular topic for you guys,
oh
do
yeah,
we
look,
agree
I
or
think
disagree?
You've hit the nail definitely. I think it's and I think their importance of the contribution that they make to safety outcomes as well. Even if we go beyond sort of the mental health outcomes for an individual, but if we were looking at the interaction between those constructs and physical safety outcomes. I can recall a work site that was it was a FIFO work site, and they were basically just their whole workforce was a contractor workforce, and they were on a 4-week contract at a time. So they'd go off for their off swing, and then they'd know sort of 2 days before the next swing whether they had another contract or not. And once the industry was in a bit of a low price for commodities at the time, Once the commodities price picked up, they found very quickly that they were losing a lot of experienced workers and having a lot more green hats on site. And they were also finding that people just weren't reporting safety concerns when they observed them, because they were very aware of the fact that they were quite easily just not offered a new contract at the end of their R&R period. So, that's one anecdote, but I think it really made it very clear, that relationship between psychological safety and safety outcomes, and that obviously ties back in with, industrial relations around job security and the types of contracts that are provided. And, the actual project that was being done was an 18-month contract, so there wasn't really any good reason to have people working on a 4-week at a time contract. So that sort of, that ties in then. How does IR relate to safety? And when you start looking at these stories and seeing how those tendrils do really reach out into all of those different functions in an organisation, it helps, I think, to just, a lot of the time understanding a story helps us to understand a concept. And so, that's helpful. And then if we think about psychosocial hazards, even if they're not a direct contributor to a safety event, if we think about mental load, and somebody's ability to detect an emerging situation, for example, to troubleshoot, to respond, to de-escalate, all of that is impacted by how much mental load they have. And, mental load doesn't distinguish between physical tasks and other sources of distress or thought or whatever it might be. If we have greater levels of distress or sources of load, then that is just going to impact our ability to respond to safety matters when they emerge.
Yeah, and if I can just pick up on that, there's a wonderful symposium that's on Tuesday afternoon it's called Injured Voices, Safer Choices, and it features a number of people that have either lost somebody in the workplace or who have been injured in the workplace. And there's a particular scene that we're going to debrief quite factually that led to, unfortunately, the loss of 3 people in New South Wales. And it's interesting speaking to our union colleagues that investigated that matter afterwards, and they're going to talk about it there. But if you go back and have a look at the psychological safety in that workplace, hearing the anecdotes after the fact, you can see that was where all the red flags were, that may have been the difference between preventing the incident or not. So at face value, it looked like there was fairly low, just to give you a really quick anecdote, there was fairly low incidents at that workplace, to the point where they even had a sign out the front that said, X amount of days, that old, I think Homer Simpson, like the Simpsons, X amount of days since the last incident, right? But the fact of the matter was the psychological safety in that workplace was so poor that people were just in complete fear of raising an issue, of telling leadership that something was going wrong because of their historical response to that, and it could even be non-illegal things. And to your point again, Joelle, that industrial relations element, they weren't, discriminating against them so overtly, but, their overtime would start to dry up or start to lessen, or the shifts that they were getting were a little bit more poor. So that psychological safety, I think if we think about it on a broader scale as well, it can literally be the difference between life and death. You want to hear from your workers who are the ones on the ground that are seeing and detecting these problems, or you create an environment where they don't, and we end up in a world of pain for everybody involved. So there's definitely some things like that we're going to explore at the World Congress as well, which probably give effect to that. There's also a session, if you wouldn't mind me just mentioning, on crisis management on one of the days, where we're really doing a bit of a review and taking the lessons from 2 major incidents in the world in the last 5 years or so, one being Dreamworld, which we all are very familiar with in Australia, and that catastrophe there, but also the Beirut ammonium nitrate explosion. So we've got 2 people directly involved in both of those incidents that'll be talking about what they saw, what they learned, and how and how that all played out essentially. But some rich international content. And if I think about Dreamworld and Beirut, just on that run of thought for the moment, two totally different environments. You've got a major hazard facility and you've got a fun theme park and amusement park, right? But the synergies we're able to draw between those two incidents is so fascinating. So another really, really cool session at the World Congress.
Yeah, no, there's definitely no shortage of symposia. I'm interested in the one on psychological safety, which quotes Amy Edmondson and then goes on to talk about psychosocial risk management. So I'm wondering,
that's beyond the buzzword.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if they're going to be talking about psychological safety or psychological health and safety. I guess I'll only know if I turn up. So
maybe they'll talk about both.
Maybe they'll talk about both, like Joelle just did.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Although it has flagged, I do need to do a post on the difference between employee safety voice and psychological safety, because I think psychological safety is broader than just people voicing, concerns. That's one part. Whereas employee safety voice, I think, is very much focused on that. Hey, can we get people to speak up if they need to address something? And there's a much broader literature base on that topic.
And we know as well that, when you have your employees, that safe environment where your employees can raise issues, separate to what I just described there, we know that that's where so much intelligence comes from, right? That the guy's literally doing the job. And it's not just around and businesses that have really positive ways in which they can hear from their workforce without fear of repercussion about what's going on the ground. You see some real productivity gains too. So it's not just safer workplaces, it's the productivity. Really exciting. So beyond the buzzword though, back to your point, Jason, that's going to be a pretty cool session. There's also caring for our people is the other key mental health item. We do have a whole bunch of things pertaining to psychological safety and psychosocial risk for the record, threaded throughout different symposium as well. And the formatting is wonderful. So, they're not all panels. I just want to call that out because there is a lot of content. We've got one session that involves ACT Australia, you might be familiar with, who do kind of learning play. So they're quite famous in Australia for having done Deepwater Horizon, learning play on Deepwater Horizon quite a few years ago. But they're actually putting on a play in one of our sessions, and that play will pause at different sections, and then we're going to bring in a rung event experts who have been shortlisted through the abstract process to commentate on what we've just seen play out. So we're really trying to be different in the way that we're putting on this session. It's not just stand in front of a podium, and much to some of our colleagues dismay, you mean I can't have a PowerPoint? No, you can't. There are no PowerPoints, but we've got video, we've got all different format, which is going to be exciting.
Yeah, one I'm going to go to is the one that Dear Day and Sam Popple are doing a workshop on day one on the Monday. So I'll see people there if they want to hear about workload management it's one of the key psychosocial risks that we need to get on top of. But guys, we thank you so much for your time discussing the World Congress today. One of the questions that we do like to ask all our guests though about this stage in the podcast is a key takeaway. And that is, what are your hopes for the future of workplace mental health?
I think for me it is primarily wanting to see PCBUs understand it and take action themselves to ensure that they've got a psychological safe workplace. So yes, we need to talk to our staff. Yes, we need to talk to colleagues. But at the end of the day, the duty rests with the PCBU. And I really want to actually see the PCBU take the time, take the effort to actually understand and respond. I think that's really important. And obviously, I'm speaking as a regulator as well, but that's really important. Yes, we want to encourage workers to speak, but I do think the PCBU really needs to grab hold of this opportunity to ensure that their workforce is safe. So that's what I'd like to see happening.
Yeah, that's a great thought, Andrew, and something I've mentioned previously. Like, there's a lot of people just waiting for people to raise an issue, but if the PCBU hasn't first of all shown that they're interested by actively consulting with their workforce to begin with, then people aren't going to raise any issues in this area. So yeah, the PCBU needs to start that process. Skye.
Yeah, I think for me, it's similar. And if I take it from a slightly different tact as the regulator, we have in New South Wales 1 million businesses and 370 inspectors. So if everybody that has responsibility collaborated and worked together and shared, we could actually start to prevent harm. But if we do it in isolation, we're never going to get there. Waiting for the regulator to dictate what should be done is not the way that it's going to work here. So I guess what I'm hopeful for is to see better collaboration, connection, communication and sharing between that broad work health and safety community, which I call out as businesses, HSRs, workers, the regulator, the academia, the work health and safety community, and then professionals in their own right, and everybody that is in that space working together for a better future. I think that the second part of that for me is that if we all work together, that's going to have an impact. But similarly or simultaneously, if we see or if we're able to better communicate and highlight the benefits to work health and safety, I'd love to see those moral obligations lift, because there is financial benefit in order to do so, even though we continue to think there is a gap. And I'd like to see us to go beyond compliance to actually productive and thriving workplaces that are healthy and safe. And that's everything from, aspirationally, that ESG proposition in the S particularly, tapping into that UN Sustainable Development Goal number 8, and starting to see the benefits for investors, for employee attraction and retention, and everything in that sphere for reputation of businesses, but seeing that work health and safety fits in there and there's an opportunity. Looking at that total worker health, we've still got this blurred line issue, right? Where people somehow, even after COVID, think that work and home just have this line in the middle of them, whereas the total worker health concept, I'm sure you guys are familiar, is really where I'd love to see us get one day. It is progressive and it is advancing. But so I think they're kind of the couple of things in my mind: better collaboration and communication among the entirety of the work health and safety community, and secondly, let's start to see those opportunities, tap into the ESG proposition, move beyond base compliance, and think about that total worker health concept.
Yeah, it's great sentiments there as well, Skye. Thanks.
All right, and so last question for the two of you, and I'll start again with you, Skye. Do you have parting words of advice for professionals who want to work in the field of psychological health and safety?
For professionals, for psych professionals or work health and safety professionals that are playing in the psych space?
Anyone.
Okay. So I think if I think about the work,
go for safety professionals.
Yeah, good. Okay. So I think for safety professionals, tap into your networks. We have, and you guys know, we have such a beautiful and connected work health and safety community in Australia. And I think that we all have really positive will to be able to help each other, because we all are working in this space. I think that sentiment that was called out earlier is really important. Whether you're talking about psychological safety or psychosocial risk, it might seem very daunting. However, you don't need to be a psychologist to play in this space, but educate yourself, and then understand when to escalate. So I think that was really important to escalate, to bring in a technical specialist as you would, a civil engineer when you're looking at an infrastructure, concern or otherwise. So look, I think it's just, educate yourself, work with your community, and don't avoid it, because you can't. It's not going away. So you need to be progressive. There's opportunity here.
Yep. The rattlesnakes are under the rocks, whether you look for them or not. Yep. And Andrew, parting words of advice from you.
I'm going to take the opportunity to plug the Congress. My parting words of advice are: come along to the 23rd World Congress on Safety and Health. There'll be a whole lot of safety professionals there, those who specialise in psychosocial safety, mental health, but also across the whole spectrum of the work that we do in the safety world. So please come along to the 23rd Congress. Come and find me, Andrew Gavrielatos, and that's just to help you, Jason, a little bit with the name.
Appreciate it.
Not a problem. And let's have a conversation. As I said, several thousand people there. There's lots to listen to. There's lots to learn, but also people have got a lot to learn from each and every individual that's listening to this podcast as well. So we'd love you to share your thoughts, your knowledge with many other people who are coming in from around the world. So get a ticket, full day pass, $18.95, a bargain, and a day pass at $650. www.safety2023sydney.com. We'd really, really love to see you there.
And we'll pop that link in our show notes as well. for listeners.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and mention the Psych Health and Safety podcast. You won't get any benefits or anything initially.
But just mention it anyway.
Just mention it anyway,
right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's some parting advice is, listen to people that know, listen to people that are sharing this information. So no, I agree. Get along. You'll be there anyway. The one thing I didn't mention, and apologies, I remiss of me to not mention this, but we've got a 4-day ticket, as Andrew said, for $18.95, which is pretty economical in this space.
If you're coming from the US or the UK, that is cheap.
It's cheap as chips, right? And
under £1,000.
Right, exactly right. That's what I was telling them when I was in London promoting the event. It's so cheap. Come along, Sydney in spring. But there's social events too, right? So on the Monday night, you've got your social, your welcome ceremony. After the opening ceremony, you've got your welcome social. Wednesday night is this 4-hour beautiful networking event at the Rocks, in Sydney. I don't know if you're familiar, but you've basically got this beautiful view on the right of the Opera House, on the left of the Harbour Bridge, and all of, a couple of thousand of your closest work health and safety friends. So there's cool things like that. But the bonus day, the 5th day, is the bit that I was remiss in not mentioning. Technical tours. So you can actually opt in to go on a technical tour, all included in the ticket, but really to go and see how other businesses are doing work health and safety in practice. As I said, we've had this real focus on the practical, tangible things. And you can go and have a look, for example, at Luna Park, to have a look at, how they're doing work health and safety in their space. We've got Cube, who do logistics, showing all of their wonderful automation and what they're doing there. We've got Amazon and their collaborative robots facility, which is the largest collaborative robot distribution centre in the Southern Hemisphere, as well as, places like Safety Culture and our very own Test Safe chemical testing facility. So another really practical thing included in that ticket, loads on.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, thank you two so much for coming on, and thank you for all of your hard work behind the scenes and in front of the scenes of pulling together.
Congratulations as well.
Yeah, for putting on such a huge congress. We really hope that we smash our targets in terms of attendance, and that everyone gets a really great learning and networking experience.
Brilliant. Thank you both for having us on. I really appreciate it.
And see you in Sydney.
We'll see you there. So, listeners, that brings us to the end of this podcast. Remember, we do video these when we have our interviews with our guests, so you can check out the videos, probably not this one, but of other guests on the Flourish DX YouTube channel. We also will take some clips from this, as we do with other Flourish DX Psych Health and Safety podcasts, and put it on the Flourish DX LinkedIn page. And while you're over on LinkedIn, you'll find the Congress, you'll find Joelle and myself, and you'll find Skye and Andrew as well. So do continue the conversation there. But thanks again, listeners. We will catch you next episode.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety podcast. To stay up to date with the latest on psychological injury prevention, follow Flourish DX on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Psych Health and Safety podcast at www.psychealthandsafety.com.